Hello. Thanks for joining us for BookBound 2020, a From Home literary festival. My name's Dan Richards, and I'm here to host this conversation between artists Caleb Femi and Stanley Don Wood. This event has been curated in partnership with Wasafiri magazine to raise money for the UK-based mental health charity Mind. Mind provides advice and support to empower people experiencing mental health problems. Their statistics show that on average, 1 in 4 people will experience a mental health problem in a typical year. And 2020 has been anything so far but a typical year. And it's wonderful to say now that we've exceeded our target. At the moment, we've raised £1,300, and now we'd like to push beyond and double that. So if you'd like to make a donation to support Mind, please use the link below at the BookBound Just Giving page. You can find out more about BookBound, Wasafiri, Mind, and all of our authors and artists by visiting our website, which is bookbound2020.co.uk. And now on to this event. Caleb Femi is an acclaimed London poet, playwright, and filmmaker, featured in the Dazed 100 list of the next generation shaping youth future. He's used music, dance, and spoken word performance to push the boundaries of poetry. Caleb was the first Young People's Laureate for London between 2016 and 2018, and his debut poetry collection, Poor, is set to be published by Penguin Books in July. So welcome to you. Stanley Donwood is known worldwide for his work with the band Radiohead, for whom he has produced artwork since 1994. Stanley's illustrations often touch on socio-political issues, and he works in a large variety of media. Stanley's work has led to both do you know, Stanley, I've written an intro for you that doesn't make sense. Oh, well, that seems quite apt. It's going to be fine. He's made big work, essentially, and exquisite fine art printmaking as well. And he's won 2 Grammys for Best Recording Artwork stuff with the Radiohead albums Amnesiac and In Rainbows. And he's published a number of books, including most recently, There Will Be No Quiet and Bad Island, which was also with Penguin. So eventually, welcome to you both. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
I thought that went really well. So you both know it's all uphill from here. Caleb, I wondered if I could start by asking you about Poor, your new collection.
Poor is Poor's my debut collection. It's a book that I think I've been writing all my life, and sort of an appropriate sort of introduction or way to introduce myself, like on the print page into the world. It combines poetry and photography to explore life growing up as a young teenage boy in South London, particularly North Peckham Estate. What my main focus on this collection was exploring, or at least contemplating, how the built environment influences the lived experience of young people like me, and also how community and the culture of community does that as well. So looking at music, looking at education, looking at architecture and design theory, and how that all comes together to sort of create what is essentially life for a very important demography. And I say that because if we think about like what it means to be young and British in mainstream media, if we look at like culture and fashion and music and elements of film, a lot of it is founded in the young British sort of working class communities, really. So that essentially is what the book's about.
Yeah, I've seen you talk about your kind of how you identify and the importance to you of your kind of you know, your Britishness, but also your heritage, you know, because you're born in Nigeria, is that
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah, and there's a brilliant poem that I've seen you read where you talk about how the rain that you get in
All
Nigeria.
right. Oh, that was, do you know, sorry, go on.
No, 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 carry on.
No, because that poem was like a poem that was, it's so old that now that you've mentioned it, it's just reminds me the fondness that I have behind that poem, and the story in which like the story, I guess, that sort of that birthed it, and the irony of like, so I grew up without a significant time in my life without my parents, and even though I spoke to my dad and my mom on the phone a lot, I kind of almost forgotten how they looked, and sort of formed my own images, especially of my father, who had this like deep booming voice, who has this deep booming voice. And in my head, he was someone who was going to be like 8 foot tall and look like Michael Jordan or something. And the first time I meet him, he's like the same height as me, and I'm 7 years old. So that's why I'm just like that. Yeah. So that sweetened me a little bit to hear you mention that poem.
Yeah, sure. I guess, I mean, it kind of makes sense with what you're talking about in terms of the architecture, in terms of, you know, the kind of perhaps people's expectations, or people have this image of kind of, you know, Peckham. And, you know, it says it says some of the blurb for the poor book that, you know, that it's an estate of 1,444 homes, and you can walk around it for 2.5 miles on these raised walkways and never touch the ground, you know. And if you don't know that estate, if you don't know estate life, that just sounds a bit sci-fi. It sounds kind of like, you know, crazy, but this is the sort of lived experience. But I guess people don't know that world because, you know, it's when it's just written down like that, it sounds so other, I guess.
Absolutely. I still, even up to this day, I still wonder how like a project like that was sort of approved by the council. Literally, I remember being in primary school and just going weeks and weeks and weeks without necessarily having to ever leave my estate, because on your estate you have your laundrette, you have your corner shops, you have any sort of amenities that you needed to sort of live day to day. And when you sort of create such a architectural whatever the word is, and then you put working class, the bottom end of working class people to live in those spaces, it's sort of the worst thing you can do. It's almost like othering them, like through not only through, you know, the way that society is structured to other working class people, but physically create almost like a separate living space that is entirely self-contained and sort of away, where like like all the difficulties, all the questions that sort of have to be asked of the government and the surrounding powers that be, kind of like it's out of the public eye and sort of away. I don't even remember police really coming or having a big presence on the estate. It's usually when something has happened, then they sort of come in as some sort of cleanup crew.
Well, I guess is it the idea of it's a kind of utopia? And Stanley, your work often touches on this because it can be quite architectural. You know, this idea of we have this utopian vision, except, you know, people get in and then they mess it up.
So I was thinking, you know, when Caleb was saying, well, I wonder when they were designing and building the estate, then they've got the laundrette and they've got the shops and they've got all the walkways that are away from traffic. So they're like on paper, it looks like a good idea because you're not going to get run over by a car. You've got everything you need. You don't have to drive to go to the shops, all this sort of thing. And then it's how it's done socially after that, how it's maintained and funded, all that. Because like some of it, like the Barbican is a kind of brutalist concrete estate. but it's got cinemas, it's got theatres, it's got a waiting list for people to live in it. And so I don't know. I don't know if it's. I agree that like a lot of the architecture can be very overbearing, and especially in this country, like a load of concrete and rain and misery and cold. It's just like it's not gonna work. But I don't know. Yeah, I think a lot of like the stuff that I got interested in sort of through doing artwork for the J.G. Ballard books is because it's like a massive disappointment. Like these sort of theoreticians and building designers, so they're like town planning, but they're social planning, and they're thinking everyone's going to behave like the little figures in their drawings will. They're not allowing for what people are like and what's going to happen when you put everyone in a space and you take away all of their support. I don't know.
I agree.
It's interesting in as much as when you're talking about the kind of there's a brilliant interview that you, Caleb, actually have with Kano in Another Man magazine, and he says at one point when you're interviewing him about his album, I worry about doing press and having this conversation in a world and it doesn't involve the people being spoken about, you know? And he obviously really enjoyed talking to you about the music because you fundamentally got it on every level and we're asking him intelligent questions. But it feels like the same could be said about that kind of social engineering kind of thing. At no point were the people actually involved.
There's no consultation.
No.
It's just like, this is where you're going to live. You know, because they did that people used to have the community, but it was called the slums, and they knocked them down and replaced them with estates.
And then anything that I guess happens after that is the fault of the people on the estates. It's not, you know, we've given you this lovely, nice thing, but then there's no safety net, I guess. And talking of that kind of misconception of stuff, something I was very struck by, Caleb, in your writing is this kind of like Max Porter on Port describes you as a poet of truth and rage, heartbreak and joy, you know, and in those words, you've kind of got everything, you know? You're not being boxed into a corner and says, you know, you're not an inner city poet in that way. You know, he's immediately like, he is talking about the universal stuff. And you have said, you know, the idea that young Black boys are essentially angry, which is, you know, what a lot of, certainly you were talking about the media seems to have, you know, they are troubled, they are angry, they have a sort of, you know, they don't have a full scope of kind of, I don't know, you know, it's seen that they don't have a full scope of emotions in that way. And that seems to me something that's at the heart of all your work, which is to not prove people wrong, but show people the other side of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes it's really difficult to read poetry, like some of my poems that sort of talk about the more difficult aspects of life, because I think one of the worst feelings is feeling like you're garnering people's pity. I think that's one of the most insulting responses that you can like sort of give to someone who's like reading you like you know, a poem or a story, or they retelling something in some way, given a pity that you don't quite empathize in, and you're sort of bestowing it on that person as a sort of charitable response. I find the sort of 2D presentation of most of the time, yes, of young Black boys, how that sort of like reductive presentation of their experiences. So it's because for me anyway, growing up in North Peckham, there was so many elements of it that was enjoyable, because essentially when you live in a difficult situation, difficulty becomes a normalcy, and then everything else you begin to make do of. Like there are times of joy, there are times of laughter, and there are more times of joy and more times of laughter, because that's the only thing that is going to be medicinal to the difficult situations that you live in. So to not speak on those elements of the experience is something that I found quite frustrating. I found that it was pandering a lot to people's sort of need to sort of either feel better about themselves or have this sort of voyeuristic journey where they can sort of come back and appreciate their lives or something like that. So in this book really does try to focus a lot more on the joys, on the funny times, on the ridiculous times, on the times that were borderline magical and fantastical in their sort of essences. Like one of the most prominent memories that I have associated with North Peckham Estate is the detergent that they used. I think it was every Monday or every 2 Mondays, which smelled like bubblegum. And that was something that I always looked forward to. And that is like one of the most prominent memories that I have of that time. So it's always like a bit of a disappointment sometimes when the only topic or the only section of conversation that is associated with like North Peckham Estate is the more sort of sadder side of things.
I mean, Stanley, I remember having a chat with you a while ago about the joy, talking of the joy of kind of like the difficult times that people might not remember. You know, you loved being on the Dole in Plymouth, and well, you know, but it wasn't that.
No, I mean, yeah, it's like Caleb was saying. You kind of, I think, I've kind of, I got a bit of a selective memory with that. You know, I remember I'd remember detergent smelling of bubblegum, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of, but it's like when you're young and you have less to worry about in a way, or your worries are kind of sort of feel like they're in an arena that you can understand. But yeah, and then I guess, yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think enjoy is too strong a word. I look back on it without too much regret.
But I remember you saying that there was like the pub, in talking of arenas. So you'd be in the pub and with other people, and you had your little world, and it was quite sort of a small world at that time.
But the 2 nights after you get your gyro, that's it. After that, it's sit at home.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was really a good time.
And at that point, you were kind of, a lot of your artwork was with paint on walls. You told me.
Yeah. But that was all there was, because I went to art college, and then I didn't have my job didn't work out. I was going to be a tree surgeon, funnily enough, and I hitchhiked down to Cornwall to sign up for a job at this place called Tavistock Woodlands, and I got there, and this was before the internet and mobile phones and everything. And I got there, they'd laid off half their workforce, like about 2 weeks before I got there. So I ended up on the Dole in Plymouth, which is, it's a funny town. It's like I heard it described as like a post-industrial northern town marooned on the coast of Cornwall, which is kind of what it's like. So big, it had a big Navy presence, and then the Navy presence got smaller. And so all of the industry that was supporting the Navy was cut. So I kind of, because I was trying to do anything that involved art. So I did some community art projects, which were kind of challenging for me, trying to get, to make things happen when there's no resources and no money was very difficult, and too much hard work, really, for no money. So, but I remember the the good things that happened rather than the bad. I kind of gloss over the mugging and go with the pub, you know.
Yeah. And because you've also said that, you know, a lot of you like to be anonymous. So in another life, you'd be painting pub signs or something. You would be what they call a what's it artist? Sorry,
just like traveling, whatever. Yeah, I mean, I sort of wish that was still possible in a way, because you know, because of got into doing art because of the situation at the time. Because when I was at school, if you were good at art, then you could get into art college and you didn't have to pay. I mean, you got a grant. They paid for you to live. They almost paid for you to pay your rent as well. I just missed that. You used to be able to go to university or college and they'd give you a grant to live on and they'd pay your rent. Can you imagine that? Amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's just got less and less and less and less. So yeah, kind of like that's, I ended up doing what I do now by accident, by not being able to do what was, you know, I'm supposed to be like a lumberjack, all strong, check shirt. Probably would have had hair still and a big beard.
yeah.
I can see it though. You carry that dignity of it.
I've got like an invisible beard.
Yeah. And in that way, I mean, when you were growing up, Caleb, did you want to be a poet? Is that what you wanted to be? How did this happen?
Growing up, I didn't really have anything concrete that I wanted to be. I know that I hijacked a lot of other people's dreams. I had friends who, you know, the typical ones wanted to be a footballer or wanted to be a doctor or this or that, and I think I never really knew what I wanted to do. So I entertained other people's dreams and sort of like vicariously fantasized in that way. It was only until I think I was about 18 years old. So in school, I went to a very interesting school, a very difficult school, Geoffrey Chaucer, which was on the Old Kent Road, very aptly named as well. And by the time I was in year 10, I had got all the GCSEs that I needed in life to sort of move forward. I started doing GCSEs from year 8. And it was a scheme that the school sort of put in place for troubled kids who had potential. So if they felt like you wasn't really going to make it to year 11, they would put you in for your GCSEs as early as possible, to sort of at least get you down on data to, you know. So by the time I was in year 10, I was, which is about 14, 15, I was very much disenfranchised with education and with this idea of like building a career and moving forward with things, because there wasn't, I don't know, maybe it was just that sort of engagement that you're in it for the long haul. I kind of felt like I was done. So I've got a lot of time to play. It wasn't until I was about 18 years old that I remember reading Frankenstein again for the first time for like many years. And I was seeing a girl at the time, and she was studying it in her A-level English class. And we had this like fantastic conversation. Shout out to Tina, you're amazing. And she was like, "Oh, this is what I do. This is basically what I do in school, every day." And I was like, "Wait, what?" And she was like, "Yeah, this is A-levels. This is what we're doing in it." And it sort of inspired me from that moment on to like get back into education. I hadn't, the last time I had done GCSEs was halfway through year 11 maybe. And then after that, I was just sitting on like these 12 GCSEs. And then I guess that's like a 3-year gap of just like not doing anything. So it was a daunting process to come back into education. You know, you're sort of starting again where a lot of your peers are like much younger than you. You're one of the oldest, and it's all a bit much. And it was my first English A-level lesson. We were looking at I remember clearly we were looking at Robert Frost's Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, mm-hmm. which I know off by heart. We were looking at Robert Frost, Yeats, and Eliot. And from that moment on, poetry became something that was very important to me. I had always been writing from maybe about 12 years old, but I was writing music, you know, it was the early ages of like the grime era. So I was very much involved in that, going on pirate radio station, but I didn't really actively sort of own poetry and its like potential, not only in my life, but in the lives of like others, like its ability to forge a community out of nothing. And it was that first lesson that sort of stuck in me. And I sort of misinterpreted what that feeling was. I thought what that feeling was that I needed to be in an academic sort of relationship with poetry. And that sort of led to me going to university, studying English, focusing on poetry, and then wanting to be someone who was able to be in a room with other young people and just like discuss poetry. So being a teacher was something that sort of fit that profile that I wanted. So I ended up being an English teacher when I left uni. And whilst I was doing that, poetry was still a very important aspect of my life. I was writing it, and not necessarily for the world to hear. I was just writing it because of its therapeutic qualities, but also because it was something that it felt like I had to do in the same way that I had to eat food, I had to drink water, had to breathe. Writing poetry was just something that I didn't know why. It was just a natural response that I had to do. And then I think it was in 2015 that something clicked in me. I'd always struggled as a student with the education system, and then now being a teacher, the education system was just as troubling to me. And in the same way that I was quickly disillusioned with it when I was a student, the same thing happened again as a teacher, especially when the curriculum changed from when the EBAC stuff got introduced, and it wasn't like A star, A, B, C, D, etc. It was like numbers 9, 8, 7, 6, and it was no longer about creativity and imagination and understanding that intelligence has many, yeah. So that was sort of the moment that I knew that I needed to do something that was edifying, not only to me, but to the community, to other young people, independent of the constraints that the curriculum sort of created. So I was like, yeah, sod it. I'm going.
How long did you last? How long did you stay?
I lasted 3 years, three strong years.
Pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I left, and poetry was all I wanted to do.
Does poetry does it work for you as well without music?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was listening to like loads of your work this morning, and the music for me, like poetry is, I find it really hard to read. I can hear it, but when there's music, I can really hear it. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. I most of my work exists outside of music, and it exists on the page because first and foremost, my introduction to poetry was on the page. It was reading all the poets that, you know, circulate and exist within the curriculum. And for me, it was something that I felt I didn't necessarily feel like I was invited to that space.
Yeah.
Because
Very few people feel like that. I think.
Yeah, very few people. And also there's this like sort of weird mishistory with everyone sort of thinking that poetry sort of began on the page, which it didn't. We know that poetry is originally a oratory tradition. So there is something that exists. I think poetry on the page is valid and exists like that, and its existence like that is important. But I also think it's we have to be careful not to sort of not see the importance with the written, the vocal word.
Yeah,
there is
both of you are very interested in that kind of sort of multimedia thing. I mean, you know, it's so interesting sort of researching both of you, sort of catching up, that neither of you stick to anything, you know, religiously in that way. You're always using the material that will serve your subject best, if that makes sense. Be that, you know, performance, or be that, you know, I mean, I know, Stanley, you love a bit of lino, you love a lino cut, you know, can't wait to get back to a lino with a chisel, you know.
Maybe.
And in the same way that looking at something like Wishbone, it's just the most beautiful mesh and meeting of worlds in that way. Can I ask, actually, Stanley, can I ask you just to, if you would show us, since we're talking about lino cut, can I ask you about Bad Island? Because that's a book that's come out recently. And I suppose my real question is, you've written this, yeah, I know. You've written this book that actually you haven't written. You haven't written anything.
No. It's there's no words. It's just picture after picture after picture after picture after picture, and it goes on. And it doesn't end well. It's what I wanted to do was make a book like there was something that could have been handed to people at a market stall in any town, in any country, at any point in the past or in the future. It's like a kind of a mute testament, really. Because you know, I've done quite a lot of writing and quite a lot of using text and images together, because it's like with writing with words and music, poetry and music. So if you look at song lyrics, that's a poem, but then when you hear it, it's something else, and when you hear it live, it's something else again. And it's the same with, I think, with words. When you put them with an image, you can completely change what the image means. For instance, one of the things I did that was not popular was I took the writing, the text, from a car advert I think it was in the early 90s. They brought out a car called the Ford Probe. This is utterly true. And I got the strapline underneath the advert. They had a picture of the car, and I put a picture of a massive cock from a porn mag above it. And just those two things together completely you realized how ridiculous the writing was. This copy that they'd written to advertise a car, when you put it underneath a picture of a dick, it's just like, what the hell were they thinking when they wrote this to advertise a car? And so I was kind of like riffing on ideas of like people like Barbara Kruger and Jenny Holzer, who use word and image. Another guy called Victor Victor Bergin or Bergin. I don't know how you pronounce his name, but I really like their work. So I did a lot of stuff that was word and image, and often words and images that weren't mine. Like with the car advert and the dick. Obviously, I didn't write the stuff. I didn't take a picture of my dick, you know. And so I got a lot of pieces of writing from the Pelican history of England, and using photographs that I either found or my friends took. And then you get this weird dissonance between the image and the words.
Mm.
So this is what I've been doing for ages, and that's what I feel comfortable with. So to do this was quite a strange thing for me, to try to tell a story, to maintain a narrative over 80 pages. It was also like a job of actually having a job, like piecework. It was 80 liner cuts takes quite a lot of chiseling. And also it was like I was learning what was going to happen as I did it, because I didn't have a script. I didn't have a plan. So I started by drawing the sea and then this island, and then each day I'd have to think, what's going to happen today? So I kind of enjoyed finding out what was going to happen. It was like being told a story.
In that way where, you know, you're kind of, I mean, I'm not going to say that you're to blame for the current situation and the lockdown and everything, but the book essentially chronicles an island.
Yeah, I know.
A series of terribly bad things happen, and then more bad things happen.
Really bad. I feel really bad about it because, you know, when the book came out, we had like a book launch, and it was just, I think it was okay. It was the 20th of February. So yeah, like the third week of February, just about, I don't know.
Yeah, just before.
Just before.
Yeah.
A few weeks.
I don't think anyone got infected at the book launch. I hope not.
Wow.
I don't know.
But within all of your
like
work,
symptomatic, like, I don't know.
no,
There were
not
loads of people
directly.
there. I had quite a good time, and I left before the end. Always a good idea. Never stay to the end.
Wait,
Especially-
you left before the end of your own book launch?
Yeah, you have to go. Anyway, yeah,
I'll keep that in mind.
yeah.
To be fair, you haven't met Stanley's audience. They're awful. You have to leave.
This is diamond information. The other thing is you've got to leave before the end, but don't tell anyone. Just
Okay.
act like you're just like nipping out for a cigarette or going to the loo or something, and then just don't come back. Uber.
Noted.
Isn't that called? It's called an Irish goodbye, isn't it,
Is
or
it?
something like that?
An
It's
Irish goodbye.
an Irish goodbye where you just leave. You leave them wanting more.
Oh, okay.
But the thing
I'm
is
not sure
that
if I left them wanting more. I just left.
you just left. You'd had enough. There's kind of like in the book, the Bad Island book, and in all of your work, pretty much. There's a great deal of humor. There's a great deal of ridiculousness. And there's a great deal of kind of like fun that I can kind of like tell that you're having.
Really?
I would say so, yeah. And I know that you quite enjoy talking about things that went wrong. That's something, it's actually easier to tell the story, isn't it, when something went badly wrong and when it was awful, than
Yeah,
when it went quite well.
I think you know, it's that weird kind of self-deprecation. It's I guess it's a very kind of like English middle class thing. It's like oh, you know, there's nothing there, nothing, and you're kind of always downplaying anything you did that went well. And it's kind of like there's this weird code that you shouldn't talk about that, because that's like what Americans do or something like that. That kind of being proud of yourself it does not come easily to me or for anyone I know. I don't know anyone who's kind of who you'd meet at a party or in the pub back in the olden days when you used to be able to go to parties and pubs, who would say, "Oh man, I did this fucking brilliant thing. It went so well. I'm really, really pleased." No, I don't know anyone who would do that. The people I know would be like, well, you know. So the whole failure thing becomes a very easy way to talk about what you've done without sounding like a massive big head.
Yeah. But then I remember that you
Just a
said
kind of
that,
escape, really.
but-
Escaping from the dangers of having to actually justify why you're pleased with something you've done. I've definitely been pleased with some of the things that I've done, but I've been quite quiet about it if I have. And I'm much more vocal if it's been a complete disaster. It's much easier to talk about that.
does that ring true for you as well, Caleb? Or are you kind of, how do you judge kind of like your work, or do you not? Do you just move on to the next thing?
Yeah, I've been told by my friends many times that I need to sort of stop and appreciate the milestones of when you come to the end of like a particular project or something. But I guess for me, the process was more important than the end product.
Yeah.
I hope I always have a goodwill that I attach to it, and I hope it does well and does something for people. But ultimately, the journey of it was one of artistic sort of play, and I enjoyed it, and there was a lot of self-development in it, and that was important to me. So the end product is just sort of a symbol of that journey, and it's like, okay, cool, go into the world and do something, but whatever you do, don't come and report back to me.
Yeah, I know. I find it really hard to I mean, like this, I haven't looked at this. It came out like, 2 months ago. This one came out 3 months ago. Not looked at that either. And it's these things that completely consume you while you're doing it. But then, unless you're having to kind of revise something, then it's, why would you look at it?
Mm.
I have this thing with all of the projects I've worked on with like Radiohead's records. I can't, once it comes out, once it's the release, I kind of don't listen to it anymore, because I've kind of like got everything. I've rinsed it by then. There's nothing else.
And you look forward to the next new thing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a kind of thing when you get product, you get like, the record or the book or whatever, and it's like, you can have a little rest. But yeah, I'm kind of, it is like what you said about like wanting to make something for other people. That's what drives you to do it, to kind of, like, inspire, I guess, particularly with this book. Yeah, well, that one, I went around to these publishers that are trying to kind of flog the idea, so they give me some money to start making it. And what I wanted to do was, I wanted to make an art book that would be like, if I'd got that book, or got it from the library, say, when I was 14 or 15, it would have made sense to me, because I always had the thing, when you look at art books, there'd always be like of these amazing finished pieces of work, and there'd be this bit of writing about how the artist was this kind of genius, and they did that, and then they lived there, and then they did this, and then they did that, and I didn't know how do you get to do that? How do you go from, living on my estate was a different kind of estate to your estate, but it was still an estate. How do you go from living on the estate to being an artist? So I wanted to make a book that was honest, that said how I went from being on the dole to now this luxurious lifestyle here with my
You got blind. You got a blind and everything. Blind
and all these things, and and all these books, and so I wanted to write something that hopefully other people that I will never meet, and I don't know who they are and I don't know where they are, could read this and they go, oh, right, okay, you can actually just be like a normal idiot and still do this. You don't have to be different. You don't have to be special. You don't have to be rich or a genius or anything. You can just be just be who you are.
Yeah. Well, I remember the first time we ever met, you said to me, Stanley, it's always the next thing. That's the exciting thing. It's always the next thing. And you've got to work hard. Those were the two things, you know, not that hard, obviously. You've got to try not to work hard. You've got to do.
Yeah.
No. Caleb, we've only got a couple of minutes left. I would love you to read something and put something out into the world so that, you know, other people can do something with it. Do you have a poem that you could read for us?
Yes, I do. I guess I could read. Okay, I'm gonna read the title poem. Night eats day. What more is there to be known of attrition? This is what drove us to learn how to drive at 14. 4 boys in a Honda, cheap talk, and already better than ourselves of yesterday. The silver finger on the dashboard said empty, liar. Where we come from, empty means dead, and what still moves cannot be empty. By 16, we rode through the streets, blazing music till it could no longer drown out the engine of our stomachs thumping. 18, we figured it out in our marrow, knew no bowl would be passed our way. We eat only by the suppleness of iron. Whatever held us before now oxidized, cruising. We mouthed a frenzy to pedestrians. Say it with me. Say it until you tremble. Night eats day, always. What the night touches is carcass. My brother feeds his brother to his enemy because the night, I've seen it, hollow, delicious. We were Pyrex puppies by 19, nourished on hard light, swollen like the fortunate, drifting through the glossy night with a town crier's bass in our voice, laughing at our 14-year-old selves. We screamed at people crossing at the lights. Say it with me, say it until you tremble. When you get tired of running from danger, you become the danger. When you get tired of sucking on the void, when you get tired, you become. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was great. And that's the title poem.
Yeah.
That's Poor.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're doing this kind of crazy thing where we're having a conversation on screens.
Oh, I'd forgotten about that.
Sorry, I've got to bring everyone back.
Having a conversation, and I was just like, I'd kind of forgotten that we were on Zoom, and I'd kind of forgotten. So
Sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. That's great.
Don't worry, it'll be over soon. Don't worry. I was going to ask, Caleb, have you got sort of like events that, you know, are you going to find a way to kind of like celebrate the book, I guess? Are you going to have some sort of launch? Are there going to be some things around this for you?
Well, I'm not sure yet. It's the powers that be that I sort of take the lead from. Every day is a celebration of the book for me anyway. So I'm sort of, it's new times, new territory that we're in, and I think I'm trusting. All my trust is with my agent and is with Penguin, and sort of we'll see what they want to do about it. Personally, for me anyway, I'm gonna scream about this book every day for the rest of the year anyway. So
great. Yeah. Well, good luck with it, and thank you for being here today. Stanley, you're working on a lot of landscape work at the moment. Your Instagram is full of these amazing kind of brightly coloured sort of topographical stuff.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a bit about that before we go?
Well, I've been doing the artwork for the Glastonbury Festival for quite a long time, and this year was going to be the 50th anniversary, because the first one was in 1970. So I was going to do this landscape. I'd sort of been working on this idea before of mixing topography and cartography. So the shape of the landscape and what the landscape looks like from above on a large scale ordnance survey map that shows all of the field like hedges and stuff. all of the landscape features. But I paint these in really bright color. This palette of, I think I use about 9 colors, something like that.
You have a picture in your book.
And then the idea is that I was really interested, without going on for ages, with the connection between the land and the earth, and how the sky nourishes the ground, and the ground creates the clouds, and it's a cyclical thing. And a lot of religion and spirituality is, I think, is rooted in the connection between us of the earth and the sky. So the colors of the fields and the land, they bleed up into these black skies. So I've been working on a series of those. So I did this massive picture of the area of Tilton where the Glastonbury Festival is held, with all of the, you know, the old railway line and the lanes and the hedgerows, all different colors, all with their colors like bleeding upwards into the black sky with a huge rainbow. And now I've got nothing to do with that. There's nothing I can do with the painting. It's just a colored piece of canvas. So I've thought, you know, I'll just carry on. So I've just been painting more landscapes. I'm doing other sort of what they call like sacred landscapes. So I've done the chalk figures, ancient chalk figures of the islands of Britain. So the Uffington White Horse, the Cerne Abbas giant, which is the one with the club, and the Long Man of Wilmington, which is the guy with 2 poles. And now I'm working on one of Stonehenge and the surrounding area, and I'll do Avebury, and I don't know, I'll just carry on sort of quietly painting like a fucking lunatic in my little shed.
Excellent.
There's nothing else to do.
We can see these on your Instagram and a bit on Twitter as well.
No, I'm on Twitter. I'm putting little pictures up every night for people to colour in a kind of, so there's for something to do. I started off, there was one for make some, it was for the NHS was the first one. And I've got million pictures, I'll just put them on the internet each night.
Do you have something about the NHS with you to show at the second?
Oh yeah. This was I did one for it's called some charity called NHS Millions, which was, I can't even remember what it was for. But this is the picture. So
oh, that's gorgeous.
It's sort of taken from another picture I did a while ago. So I'm trying to figure out how to carry on working when there can't be any exhibitions and everything's really difficult. It's kind of hard. Yeah. So yeah, there's lots of ways I'm trying to figure out how to continue. How long it's sustainable for, I don't know.
Well, on that cheery note.
On that cheery note, that's quite cheery.
I just want to say thank you
both. We're going to die because it's actually
right.
kind of even more likely than it was before.
Well, you know, as long as we'll just keep talking. Us three, we'll sort it out. Once we're offline, we'll just keep talking and sort it out. Thank you both. Thank you both so much. This is my outro now. And so I'm going to try it again, be professional. We'll see how this goes. Thank you so much to Stanley and Caleb, and to everyone at home who joined BookBound 2020 for this event. There are lots of great events like this on our program. I mean, obviously not quite like this, but great events nonetheless. I'm talking tomorrow with Philip Hall. That's going to be good. You should definitely check that one out. But generally, just, you know, log in to Twitter and Instagram. We're BookBound 2020, and that's our website as well, bookbound2020.co.uk. Help us spread the word with the hashtag, which is also BookBound 2020. And please do consider donating to Mind on our Just Giving page. We've had 2 donations apparently during this talk, which is brilliant. And, you know, we're going to try and raise some money to help people, because I think everybody, you know, including the people in this talk, are kind of like, you know, experiencing the world as a changed place, because it is. Thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to buy the work of our authors, and please do, I think you can pre-order Caleb's book, and certainly Stanley's books, many and various books, and also artwork on records. You know, you probably need some Radiohead in your life. They're an up-and-coming beat combo. You've never heard of them, but it's going to be good. Trust me, good stuff. You can order records and CDs and books on Hive. which is the online outlet that we're linked with. They pay their taxes, they support local bookshops. It's a good thing, do that. Links to the books discussed here and a discount code on selective festival titles are below. You will find details of our authors' favorite independent bookshops there as well. So bonus, finally, at last, you can find out about the Just Giving page, which I've already mentioned. Down there, we're supporting Mind. That's it now. Thank you for tuning in. Huge thanks to Caleb and Stanley for being so marvelous and patient. And good luck to you all. Good luck to everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.